Is Pro Tools the industry standard? Now, this is a question I was asked recently, and I think the question came up because there's been a few videos that I've seen pop up on my timeline on YouTube of other people answering this question. And I figured, I'll answer it in the same way that I answered the question to the people that asked me. Is Pro Tools the industry standard? For me, it is. And the only reason for that is because of my age. A certain demographic, Pro Tools is the industry standard for. For anyone who's, let's say, anyone who's maybe 35 and above, Pro Tools is kind of the industry standard. Anyone below that, they're not using Pro Tools. There are going to be a few people in the comments, I use Pro Tools and I'm like 25. Of course, there are going to be people who use Pro Tools. But I think when it comes to the younger generations, they don't want to be paying mad amounts of money for a subscription. I mean, the Pro Tools Ultimate subscription, I think it's like something like £80 a month. Like, there'll be people in the comments who'll say, what, £80 a month? I paid that for Fruity Loops and I get a lifetime worth of updates. Brilliant. And the thing with it is like I've got Logic as well, I don't use it too much, but I have it so I can open sessions if I'm ever sent sessions in Logic. But when you think about it, like, you'd be crazy as a producer to be paying £80 a month for Pro Tools when DAWs are all pretty much the same. When it comes to recording, mixing, Pro Tools is very much the industry standard. And if you go to any studios, the majority of the studios you will go to for recording, mixing, you will see Pro Tools in them. You'll see Logic as well, but the majority are Pro Tools. Pro Tools is what's being used. Now, if you came to work with me, for instance, if I brought someone in and you wanted to work with me, you'd have to know Pro Tools. So what I would say on the subject is even if you're using Logic or Fruity Loops or Reason, any of these other DAWs, it's still well worthwhile to know Pro Tools, even if you don't think Pro Tools is the industry standard. And if you are going to other studios, if you're ever going to recording sessions, you're ever working with someone of a certain age group of 35 and above, you most probably 9 times out of 10, you will be working with Pro Tools. So I would say it's highly beneficial to understand and know how Pro Tools works. I don't really think it's the kind of industry standard like it was back when, you had Cubase, Pro Tools, you had Reason. What else did you have way back when? I think, Logic was about, when you consider there wasn't a massive kind of range of good DAWs, and Pro Tools was quite advanced way back. We're talking 20 years ago. Pro Tools was far more advanced than other DAWs, which is why at the time it was the industry standard. Now, what ends up happening in these situations is everybody, like myself, we all use Pro Tools back 20, 25 years ago. And I think what generally happens is you get to know, like, I can't move away from Pro Tools. I know it so well. And I always say this, when people ask me, what's the best DAW? The best DAW to use is the one you know the best, right? They're all pretty much the same. They come with different stock plugins, but let's be realistic. We're all using third-party plugins. There's very few kind of stock plugins that you'll ever use, and you will use third-party plugins. So a DAW, they all kind of do the same thing. No one really sounds better than the other. They all fundamentally do the same, and they achieve a very, very similar sound, if not pretty much identical. So when it comes to people of my age group and above, you know, I'm like 39 now. People of my age group and above, you're generally using Pro Tools, and you have this almost like a Stockholm syndrome where you know it so well, you've used it for so long, moving to another DAW, you know, learning all shortcuts and stuff. If you've got 20 years of experience using Pro Tools, it's hard to move away from that. I've considered moving away. The problem I have is I've got an Avid S4 behind me, and I've spent ridiculous amounts of money on all the interfacing and HDX and all these sorts of things, HD native, that it's very difficult for me to now move away from it. As much as I'd love to, I don't want to be spending £300 across all my studios per month. I'd love to just use Logic and just pay £179. There we go. And that's it. I don't like spending £300. From a business perspective, though, you know, and that's the thing, is from a business perspective, it's not too bad. And it's like, I don't want to be spending it, but it's just, you know, that is what it is. Whereas if I was a hobbyist or someone who wasn't, you know, like a producer that's not making a massive amount of money out of music production, I wouldn't want to be spending £80 a month on Pro Tools. I'd want to just pay, you know, £179 and use Logic. That's probably why Pro Tools isn't the industry standard with the younger generations, because, you know, we got locked into it. We got this older kind of generation. We got locked into Pro Tools where we now can't. We can move away from it, but it's just very hard to. So we're very much locked into it, and we have to kind of grit our teeth and kind of move with it. And, you know, look, Pro Tools made a change. Avid did a change, was it about a year ago, where they made it a little bit more enticing to get into it. And a few people did, but I really don't think the younger generation are gonna really want to use Pro Tools, because, you know, there's a kind of there is a myth behind Pro Tools. It crashes a lot. I mean, it crashed a lot years ago. Now, I mean, I get a crash every once a week, maybe, not even that. And, you know, you get a crash with every DAW. But yeah, to answer the question, I kind of think, look, it comes down to a demographic. People of the ages of 35 and above, Pro Tools is the industry standard for them. And you will use that if you go into any studio. Majority of professional studios, you will use Pro Tools. But I think people getting into music, they're not looking at Pro Tools as the industry standard. And I think when people answer this question of whether they think it's the industry standard, it depends on where they sit in the demographic, whether they're young or old. But what I will say is, the majority of studios you go to, professional studios, the recording studios or mixing studios, you will see Pro Tools, which is why it gives this kind of impression that it's the industry standard. I think that best answers this question.